Hi there, welcome to this video, which is going to be the first in a series exploring the Carol Ann Duffy poems. And if you're watching this video, I would assume you're probably going to be looking at this for your IGCSEs or maybe A-levels or IB, etc. But hopefully it's useful. The first poem we're going to look at today is called Death of a Teacher, and I'm just going to do a quick video today exploring a few key quotes and talking generally. Okay, and the first quote that we're going to look at is, as you can see, the big trees outside are into their poker game again, shuffling and dealing, turning, folding. And the biggest idea that I want to focus on is how that Duffy's suggesting that the trees are turning to something else, that they start from a certain point and they become something else. In this way, in the sense that they become something strong and solid and turn into something more flexible. It's shuffled, it's dealt, it's turned, it's folded. It's kind of looking at this idea that something is changing into something else. And if you think about the idea of poker itself, it's also linked to gambling, which kind of, like it's suggested here, might be saying something about the unpredictable nature of life, and that as it shuffles and deals and folds, people get different outcomes and people kind of bluff their way through, etc., etc. Okay, and I'm doing this fairly quickly to kind of jump between different quotes, so hopefully that works for you. But if you look at this next quote, you died yesterday. When I heard the hour home time, last bell, late afternoon, I closed my eyes. The biggest thing I want to draw your attention to is the idea that Duffy here is not using a euphemism. Quite often we would say that somebody passed away or make it seem less severe, but by doing this it means that she's not focusing on the actual act of death, but the positives that she's reminded of, and when she hears this memory, she's like taken back to that stage of her life. She hears about the news and it's like she's in the classroom again. She can hear the home bell or the last bell, and it's kind of like a reverence, like a respect, which is why quite often we look at this poem as being like a eulogy, something positive about when somebody's died, and you're focusing on those positive outcomes. Okay, and the third quote or series of quotes that I want to look at, it's actually made up of a number of quotes from the poem, but you can see it says, I saw the tree and the scratched old desk under my hands, heard the bird in the oak outside scribble itself in the air, and then from later in the poem, the smoke from the black cigarette, and then later still the edge of a page of a book. The main idea I want to get here is that we're using this extended metaphor, maybe associated with nature, maybe just focusing on the idea of trees and wood and paper, and everything is turned from that original point. In other words, the teacher generates this love of literature, this idea that it becomes something else. It becomes a written book, which might be the poetry that Duffy herself wrote. And if you look at the smoke from the black cigarette, there's also the link to Keats, and there's a slightly sensual edge, and when it's kind of intertwined and braided, maybe those are slightly more centralized aspects of it which are kind of being brought out, and maybe you see in some of the poems, like in Mrs. Toucher's class, in The Good Teachers, Head of English, maybe even a little bit as well. So what I like about here is it's all introverted. You're focusing on death of a teacher, and here it starts with A. It could be any teacher. It doesn't have an importance. It doesn't give it the name, because all of what this is doing is focusing on the effect that it had on Duffy. It's introverted in the sense of I saw this. So even though it's focusing on this teacher, we never find out who the teacher was. We never know their name. It doesn't really matter. And so really that's what I want to focus on. The idea that this poem is very much one of contrasts, of contradictions. It should be maybe negative. It should be maybe focusing on the lost side of things, and instead it's a celebration of life. And quite often you find in Duffy's poetry that it juxtaposes or it subverts our expectations. So this is doing that here. I'd love to hear what you think about this poem, whether you actually agree with my points, whether you think anything different about those ideas. But please comment, and if you want to see anything different, or if in a future video looking at one of the other Duffy poems you want to see more of something else, I'd love to hear your feedback. So thank you very much.